The station lights flickered softly as the human cargo corridor hummed with the tired breath of engines. A place where forgotten workers passed each other without names, and where a single human soldier sat alone on a cold bench, shoulders slumped, fingers numb, heart heavier than his armor ever was. He had been called many things in his short life: recruit, rifleman, expendable, but never hero. Not after the last battle, not after the screams still followed him into sleep, not after the warships left him behind at this neutral trade station with nothing but a discharge notice and a pocket that held exactly one thing: a chocolate bar. It was small, wrapped in silver foil creased by time and heat, a ration sweet he had saved through 3 jumps and 1 evacuation, something Earth soldiers traded like treasure when stars felt too far away. He told himself he would eat it when he finally stopped feeling hollow inside. That moment had not come. Across the corridor, curled near a power conduit where warmth leaked like a quiet secret, sat an alien girl, thin shoulders wrapped in a torn cloak, skin a soft shade of pale blue that shimmered faintly under station lights. Her eyes were too large for her face, luminous and tired, fixed on nothing yet somehow watching everything. She looked young, or at least young enough to make something in his chest twist. People passed her without slowing, merchants with floating crates, off-duty soldiers of other species, station guards who pretended not to see her at all. Poverty existed even among the stars, and this place had learned how to step around it. The human noticed how her hands trembled, how her breathing was shallow, how her gaze drifted toward a vending unit that dispensed nutrient packs she clearly could not afford. He told himself not to get involved, told himself he had nothing left to give. No rank, no credits, no future, just fatigue and regret stitched into muscle and bone. Still, his feet moved. He stopped a few steps away, unsure of protocol, unsure of her language, unsure why his heart was pounding harder now than it ever had during battle. He held up the chocolate bar slowly, unwrapping it halfway so the scent escaped. A small human gesture, ancient and gentle, offering sweetness instead of commands. Her eyes widened, not with greed but with shock, like she had forgotten kindness existed. Her gaze lifted to his face, searching for threat, for trickery, for the hidden law that always followed generosity in the galaxy. She did not speak. Her species did not need to. Emotion rippled across her features, disbelief, fear, hunger, something deeper he could not name. He smiled faintly, a tired human smile that carried more scars than joy, and placed the chocolate into her hands, warm from his grip. For a moment she froze, as if touching it might shatter the moment. Then her fingers closed around it, delicately, reverently, her shoulders sagging as though a weight she had carried alone finally loosened. She took a small bite, careful and slow, savoring it like a memory rather than food. Her eyes closed and moisture gathered along their edges. A sound escaped her throat, soft and broken, gratitude tangled with grief. The human swallowed hard, the hollow inside him shifting into something unfamiliar, something dangerously close to purpose. He did not see the hidden sigils embedded in her cloak activate, did not notice the faint harmonic pulse that raced through subspace at the instant she tasted the chocolate. A signal older than most human civilizations, one tied to bloodlines and oaths and royal law, far beyond the station hull, beyond the neutral zone. A warship altered course, its hull adorned with the crest of a forgotten empire, its engines burning with controlled fury, its bridge silent as ancient sensors confirmed the impossible. The lost one has been found. Back in the corridor, the alien girl looked up at the human, studying him now not as a stranger but as a variable in fate. Her voice finally emerged, soft yet carrying a weight that made the air feel heavier. "You should not have done that, human soldier." He frowned gently, confused, a little amused. "I just shared food," he said quietly. "No law against that where I come from." Her lips trembled, not in fear but sorrow, because where she came from, such an act carried consequences written in stars and enforced by fleets. She lowered her gaze, clutching the chocolate as if it anchored her to this moment. To him, "They will come," she whispered, "and when they do, everything will change." The station lights flickered again, this time not from age, but from something vast moving closer, something powerful bending destiny toward collision. The human leaned back against the wall, unaware that his smallest kindness had already crossed a line no weapon ever could, and that the galaxy had just noticed his existence. The corridor felt different after her warning, as if the station itself had begun to listen, every hum of power lines and distant engine thrum carrying a tension that pressed against the human soldier's chest. He tried to laugh it off, but the sound never quite formed. "Come for what?" he asked softly, lowering himself onto the bench again, trying not to loom over her, trying not to scare someone who already looked like she had learned fear far too early. The alien girl hesitated, eyes drifting toward the curved viewport aiding between bulkheads where stars slid past in slow procession. Her fingers tightened around the last piece of chocolate, now smaller, almost gone, as if she feared it might vanish like kindness often did. "For me," she said, "and for you." That did it. The laugh finally escaped him, low and tired. "I doubt anyone crosses half the galaxy for a girl and a candy bar. Especially not for a washed-out human with no rank." She turned to him then, really looked at him, and something ancient stirred behind her gaze. Not arrogance, not pride, but the quiet gravity of someone who had once been important and had paid dearly for it. "You are wrong about one thing, human soldier," she murmured. "You are not invisible, not anymore." He rubbed his palms against his trousers, the old reflex of grounding himself before a fight he did not yet understand. His instincts whispered that this station was no longer neutral, that the silence stretching between them was not empty but waiting. "What did you mean by law?" he asked, keeping his voice even. "You said where you come from kindness has consequences." Her shoulders rose and fell in a slow breath, the kind taken by someone preparing to reopen wounds. "My people are bound by covenant law, older than most empires. Every act creates a thread. Every thread must be answered. When aid is given freely, it binds fates together." He frowned. "That sounds like religion." She shook her head gently. "Law, enforced by fleets and bloodlines. The one who saves a royal life becomes part of it, whether they wish it or not." "Royal," he echoed, the word heavy, absurd. She did not correct him immediately. Instead, she reached into her cloak and pulled free a thin chain, broken in two places. At its end hung a small crystalline sigil, dull now, cracked, yet unmistakably crafted with precision beyond station trinkets. "I hid it so they would not find me," she said, "but the signal woke when you shared your food. The covenant does not measure wealth or power, only intent." A cold line traced its way down his spine. "You are telling me you are royalty." She nodded once, emotion filled with resignation rather than pride. "Princess of the Valari Concord. Heir to a fleet that vanished 20 cycles ago. Presumed dead so the galaxy could move on without answering for it." The word princess felt unreal in his mouth, clashing violently with the image of her sitting cold and hungry on the station floor. "If you are a princess, why are you here like this?" he asked, anger creeping in where disbelief had been. "Where was your fleet, your guards, your warships?" Her eyes shimmered. "My fleet was betrayed under flag of truce. My guards died buying me seconds. I was smuggled through debris and lies, hidden in cargo holds, traded between criminals, until even they were afraid to keep me." He clenched his jaw, remembering faces from his own war. The way betrayal always wore a uniform of respect before it struck. "They hunt me because my survival threatens treaties built on my people's erasure." She continued, "As long as I live, the war is not truly over." A distant vibration rolled through the station then, subtle but wrong. Lights dimmed for a fraction of a breath before stabilizing. Alarms did not sound. Yet every soldier's instincts on the concourse shifted, heads lifting, bodies tensing. The human felt it in his bones, the way he had always known when enemy ships exited hyperspace. "They are close," he said quietly. "Yes," she replied, "too close to be coincidence." He exhaled slowly, stood, and offered her his hand without thinking, the same way he once had to civilians in bombed-out cities. "Then we move," he said. She stared at his hand as if it were something far more dangerous than any weapon. "You do not understand what you are choosing, human soldier." He met her gaze, steady and calm. "Maybe not, but I understand this. Leaving you here would be wrong, and I am tired of living with wrong choices." Her fingers wrapped around his, warm now, no longer trembling. As they walked, the station's neutral facade began to crack. Security drones shifted patrol patterns. Traders packed faster. Whispers spread in languages he did not know. Above them, beyond hull and steel, A warship's shadow slid across the stars, silent and patient, waiting for permission to claim what fate had just bound to a human hand. They moved through the station's lower arteries where light thinned and sound changed, every step echoing longer than it should. The human soldier felt the weight of unseen eyes now, not the casual indifference from before, but attention sharpened into intent, the kind that preceded violence. The princess walked close beside him, her hand still in his, not clinging yet not letting go, as if this fragile contact was the only thing anchoring her to the present. Her earlier hunger replaced by something colder and more focused, memory resurfacing behind her eyes. "You should let me go," she said softly, without stopping. "They will offer you amnesty if you surrender me. Perhaps even reward you." He shook his head, not slowing. "They taught us that once on some backwater front, said turning people into currency made wars easier. I never liked easy wars." Her lips curved faintly, a sad, almost smile. "Humans are strange. You burn stars for principles you cannot define." They turned a corner and nearly collided with a patrol unit, armored station guards flanked by a tall avian species officer, crested head tilting as his gaze swept over them. The princess lowered her hood instinctively, but it was too late. "Identification," the officer demanded. The human soldier stepped forward half a pace, presenting his discharge slate, "Just passing through," escorting a civilian to transport. The avian's eyes flicked to the girl, lingering a moment too long, sensors humming. Something in the air tightened. Before he could respond, a tremor rippled through the deck, stronger this time. A deep, resonant pulse that rattled fixtures and sent distant shouts echoing down the corridors. "All units report," the officer barked into his comm, then paused as a reply came through. His crest feathers lifting in alarm. "Unauthorized warship entering high orbit. Concord signatures detected." The princess inhaled sharply, her grip tightening. "Move," the human said under his breath, pulling her past as confusion rippled through the patrol. The officer hesitated just long enough for protocol to betray him. They broke into a run, boots striking metal, hearts pounding. Alarms began to wail now, lights shifting to emergency amber. The neutral station shedding its mask as panic spread like fire. "Why would they come openly?" he asked between breaths. "Doesn't that break every treaty?" She glanced up at him, eyes glowing faintly now, not fear but resolve. "Because treaties are written to bury truths, not protect them. If they reveal themselves, it means the lie can no longer be contained." They ducked into an abandoned maintenance hub, sealing the hatch behind them as footsteps thundered past. The space smelled of coolant and old dust. Cables hung like veins from the ceiling. For a moment they stood there, breath ragged, close enough to feel each other's warmth. "You are afraid," he said quietly. She nodded, "But not for myself. I have lived with fear long enough to know its shape. I am afraid for you." He met her gaze, and something shifted between them, no longer just rescuer and rescued, but two survivors standing at the edge of something vast. "Tell me the truth," he said, "all of it." She closed her eyes, as if opening doors she had kept sealed for years. "My people were not wiped out by chance or war alone. They were erased by consensus, by fear of what we represented." "What was that?" he asked. "Choice," she replied, her voice steady despite the weight of it. "The Valari Covenant law binds power to empathy. A ruler cannot command fleets without first understanding the cost. Our warships answer not just bloodlines but moral resonance. Intent shapes authority." He stared at her, realizing the implications. That kind of power terrifies anyone who prefers control without conscience. "Yes," she said, reading his expression. "They called us unstable, dangerous, because we could not be predicted by ambition alone." Another vibration shook the hub, closer now, the warship asserting presence like a heartbeat against the void. "When you shared your food," she continued, "the Covenant recognized you, not as ruler, but as bound. Your intent resonated across subspace. A human soldier choosing compassion over survival sent a clearer signal than any crown." He swallowed. "I never wanted this. Nor did I want a throne," she replied softly. "Destiny rarely consults preference." Outside, the station's internal channels erupted with overlapping broadcasts. Evacuation orders, diplomatic protests, fragments of panic and awe. She stepped closer, her voice lowering. "They will demand I be returned, peacefully or not." If the station refuses, it becomes collateral. If you surrender me, you live. And if I don't, he asked. She looked at him then with something deeper than gratitude, something like recognition. Then the covenant will bind our fates fully, and the galaxy will have to decide what it fears more, an ancient law reborn or a human who chose to stand beside it. The hatch shuddered as distant impacts reverberated through the station. The warship was no longer waiting, and the mystery of what the Valari truly were began to surface, pulling them both toward a battle written long before. Either of them had been born. The maintenance hub lights dimmed to a blood-warm glow as power rerouted itself under stress. The station groaning like a wounded animal. The human soldier felt it in his teeth now, that low-pressure hum that meant shields were flexing far beyond design limits. The princess stiffened suddenly, her head lifting as if listening to a voice no one else could hear. Her eyes brightened, no longer faintly glowing but alive with intricate patterns of light that traced along her pupils like constellations awakening. "They have locked onto me," she whispered, not with fear but with awe edged by dread. "The flagship has confirmed my identity." Before he could ask what that meant, the air between them shifted, not visually at first, but emotionally, like standing at the edge of a drop and realizing the ground beneath you was never solid. The broken sigil at her neck pulsed, light spilling through its cracks, threads of energy stretching outward, not randomly, but with intent, reaching, searching. The human staggered as something answered inside him, a pressure behind his eyes, a sudden clarity that hurt, memories not his own brushing the edges of thought, ancient vows spoken in voices layered with centuries. "What is happening to me?" he asked through clenched teeth. Her breath caught. No, this should not be possible. The sigil flared brighter, and the maintenance hub vanished, not physically, but perceptually, the walls dissolving into a vast chamber of light and shadow, a place of symbols and echoes that felt more real than steel and circuitry. He stood somewhere else now, somewhere old. Warships hung like stars frozen in reverence, not machines but presences, aware and watching. A voice spoke, not aloud, but directly into him, resonant and calm. Intent confirmed, bond accepted. The princess fell to her knees beside him, shock written openly across her face for the first time since he had met her. "This is wrong," she whispered. "You are not Valari. You are not of the bloodline." The voice answered again. "Bloodline is inheritance. Covenant is choice." He felt it then, the twist snapping into place. The reason the galaxy had buried the Valari, because their power did not obey species, did not obey crowns, it answered conscience. "You resonate more strongly than any air we have tested." The voice continued, "Human soldier, your acts align with covenant law beyond probability." The princess looked up at him slowly, realization dawning like a sunrise she had never expected to see. "You are compatible." He shook his head, disoriented. "I am nobody." "You were nobody," the voice corrected. "Now you are bound." The vision shattered as alarms screamed back into existence, the maintenance hub slamming into reality. The sigil dimmed but did not go dark, its cracks now mended by threads of soft light that wrapped briefly around his wrist like a promise. Outside, a transmission cut through every channel simultaneously, overriding station authority with ancient priority codes. "This is the Valari Concord flagship Dawn of Accord." A calm voice declared, "By covenant law, we recognize the survival of the heir and the binding of a covenant bearer. All hostile actions are suspended pending judgment." Silence followed. Not peace, but stunned stillness. The human stared at the princess. "What does that make me?" Her voice trembled, half disbelief, half reverence. "It makes you something the galaxy never planned for." The hatch to the hub buckled inward then, molten edges dripping as it was cut open by precision beams. Armed figures poured in, elite boarding troops in Concord colors, weapons raised, then hesitating as their sensors screamed contradictory data. Their commander froze, staring at the human soldier, then slowly lowered his weapon. "Covenant bearer confirmed," he announced, kneeling. The princess gasped softly, centuries of protocol unfolding in an instant she had never trained for. The station authorities erupted into chaos on open channels, protests, demands, threats, but none of it mattered now. The human felt the warships above respond, not with aggression, but alignment, dozens of vessels adjusting formation, shields interlocking, power humming with restraint held barely in check. I never wanted command, he said quietly, the weight settling in his chest like gravity. The princess stepped closer, placing her hand over his heart. Neither did I want a crown. Yet here we stand. She looked up at him, eyes shining with something dangerously close to hope, the twist complete. The heir was no longer alone, and the Covenant had chosen not just a princess, but a human soldier to stand beside her. Beyond the station hull, the galaxy watched in disbelief as an ancient law reawakened, and fate shifted course, no longer asking who ruled, but who deserved to. The silence did not last. It never did when power shifted in the galaxy, because fear moved faster than diplomacy and far faster than law. Across open channels, voices rose in layered outrage. Trade guilds demanded explanations, border coalitions invoked emergency clauses, old enemies whispered opportunities. The return of the Valari was not just history correcting itself, it was a threat to every system built on their absence. On the dawn of Accord, alarms that had slept for centuries awoke, not from damage but from probability. Tactical projections bloomed across the bridge, showing futures branching and collapsing as fleets altered course. They will not accept this, the princess said quietly, standing beside the human soldier as if the station floor beneath them was already irrelevant. Entire empires profit from my people remaining dead. He felt it now, the strange awareness threading through him. Not control but connection, as if distant warships breathed in time with his pulse. Every aggressive maneuver echoing as pressure behind his eyes. What happens if they decide to ignore the Covenant? He asked. Her expression hardened. Then the galaxy burns itself trying to prove conscience is weakness. The station shook violently as a distant explosion rippled through its outer rings. Not an attack on them but a warning. A coalition destroyer firing a precision strike into empty space. Close enough to say we are watching, close enough to say we are not afraid. No casualties reported. A voice announced over emergency channels. But panic surged anyway. Crowds fleeing toward escape docks. Neutrality dissolving into survival instinct. On the flagship bridge, the Concord commander turned toward the projection of the human soldier and the princess. Multiple hostile fleets entering contested space. At least 3 factions are mobilizing under emergency authority. He swallowed. This is because of me. The princess shook her head, firm. It is because the lie they told themselves for generations has cracked. You merely revealed it. Another presence stirred within him then. Not the ancient voice from before, but something sharper, something human, anger rising alongside resolve, memories of wars fought for resources, for pride, for borders that meant nothing to civilians caught between them. If they attack the station, he said, they kill thousands just to erase us. Yes, she replied, and they will call it necessary. The sigil at his wrist warmed, not burning but urging. He understood without instruction. The Covenant did not command him to fight. It asked whether he would stand. He closed his eyes briefly, the choice already made. Then we evacuate as many as we can. If they want us, they chase us, not these people. The Concord commander hesitated only a moment before nodding. Evacuation corridors opening. Shields shifting to cover civilian routes. The response was immediate. Hostile fleets reacted like predators denied prey. Accelerating, flanking, firing warning shots that tore space itself into luminous scars. The first real attack came seconds later. A kinetic strike slamming into the station's outer shield. The impact rolling through decks like thunder. Screams echoed over comms. The human felt it like a punch to the gut. Not pain but responsibility. His knees almost buckled, then steadied as the princess caught his arm. You feel it too now, she said, the cost of every decision. He nodded grimly, welcome to command. Above them, the dawn of Accord moved, engines flaring not with aggression but precision, interposing itself between the station and incoming fire. Shields blooming wide enough to cover millions of lives. The galaxy reacted instantly, some in horror, others in fury. Ancient footage resurfaced, Valari warships shielding enemies as well as allies, refusing to strike first even when provoked, narratives rewritten in real time. They call you manipulators, a Concord officer reported, claiming you weaponize morality. The princess laughed softly, a sound edged with sorrow. They always did. Another fleet dropped from hyperspace then, larger than the others, banners of a dominant empire blazing across their hulls. their flagship broadcasting without courtesy. By authority of the Unified Treaty, surrender the Valari heir and the human bearer immediately. Failure to comply will be met with decisive force. The station trembled again as more impacts struck. Shields straining, evacuation progress slowing. The human stepped forward into the projection range. Heart pounding, voice steady despite everything screaming inside him. "This is a neutral station," he said. "You fire again, and the galaxy watches you slaughter civilians to silence an idea." Laughter crackled back. "Ideas do not rewrite law, soldier." He met the princess's gaze, then turned back to the void. "Neither do weapons, but people do." He raised his wrist slightly, the sigil responding. Warships across the Concord line adjusted formation. Weapons powering not to fire but to shield, to block, to endure. Across countless systems, observers leaned closer, historians froze mid-sentence. Soldiers hesitated at firing controls, because for the first time in generations, power was choosing restraint. The danger escalated, alliances frayed, and the galaxy stood on the edge of a battle that would not just decide who won, but what kind of civilization survived it. The shields screamed as another barrage slammed into them, energy flaring like dying suns across the void. The station groaned behind the Concord line. Evacuation counters ticking down with merciless precision. The human soldier stood at the center of it all, not on a throne or a bridge chair, but on shaking metal surrounded by strangers whose lives now depended on choices he never asked to make. His hands trembled, not from fear, but from the weight of knowing every second mattered. "Status?" he asked quietly. "Evacuation at 62%, a Concord officer replied. Strain evident even through disciplined calm. Enemy fleets tightening formation. They are preparing for decisive fire." The princess closed her eyes, inhaling slowly, memories flooding her. Childhood lessons spoken in halls that no longer existed. Covenant teachings about standing when retreat was easier. About absorbing pain so others did not have to. "They will not stop," she said softly, "because if they do, they admit we were right." The human looked at her, really looked at her, not as a symbol, not as royalty, but as someone who had lost everything and still stood between the galaxy and its worst instincts. "Then we give them something they cannot ignore," he said. The ancient awareness stirred within him again. Not commanding, not whispering, simply waiting. "What are you thinking?" she asked, concern threading her voice. He swallowed, memories of Earth surfacing, of soldiers standing unarmed between tanks and villages, of moments when courage was measured not by victory but by refusal. "I will stand down the Concord weapons," he said. The bridge erupted in stunned protests, the commander stiffening. "Bearer that would leave us exposed." "I know," he replied, "but if we answer threat with threat, we prove them right. If we answer it with restraint, we force them to choose what kind of monsters they want to be in front of the galaxy." The princess stared at him, realization dawning. "You are offering yourself." He met her gaze, steady and unflinching. "I already did when I gave you that chocolate bar," before anyone could stop him. He raised his wrist fully, the sigil responding instantly, light spreading outward like a calm tide. Concord warships powered down primary weapons one by one, shields holding but guns silent. Across the battle space, hostile targeting systems screamed warnings, firing solutions collapsing as predictive models failed, because nothing in their doctrine accounted for an enemy who refused to shoot back. "What are they doing?" a hostile commander snarled over open channels. The human stepped fully into the broadcast, his voice carrying without amplification. "We are standing down," he said. "Evacuation continues. If you fire now, you fire at civilians and at unarmed ships, not because we cannot fight, but because we choose not to." The silence that followed was heavier than any explosion. On distant worlds, feeds lit up, citizens watching in disbelief as a fleet capable of annihilation chose vulnerability instead. Commentators faltered, propagandists hesitated. The princess felt tears slip free despite herself. Centuries of Valari teaching embodied in one impossible human moment. Enemy fleets wavered, formation tightening not for attack but indecision, junior officers questioning orders, sensors flooding command decks with images that would never disappear. "Fire," the dominant Empire flagship finally ordered, voice sharp with desperation. No one moved. Another moment stretched. Then a captain's voice broke through. "My lord." Our crews are refusing. More voices followed, fractured, uncertain, weapons officers stepping back from consoles. Soldiers remembering they were people before they were instruments. The evacuation counter ticked past 90%. The human's knees buckled then, the strain of holding the covenant, of feeling every life balanced on his intent. The princess caught him, holding him upright, her voice fierce and gentle all at once. "Stay with me, just a little longer." He nodded weakly, breathing shallow, eyes fixed on the stars. At last, the hostile flagship powered down its weapons, not in surrender, but in retreat. Others followed, formations breaking, hyperspace signatures flaring as fleets withdrew rather than commit an atrocity the galaxy would never forgive. A cheer erupted through the station channels. Ragged and tearful, evacuation complete, last civilians clear, the dawn of accord repositioned, shields easing, the immediate danger past. But the aftermath loomed vast and uncertain. The humans slumped fully now, exhaustion claiming him, consciousness fading as the Covenant's light dimmed. The princess held him close. Because they forgot something? He turned his gaze upward, as if looking beyond the dome, beyond the warships and the stars. "Fate doesn't need chains," he said. "It needs consent." The pressure returned suddenly, sharper than before. Hostile fleets charging weapons again. Commanders losing patience, fear boiling over into action. Thyrea felt it too, the tremor racing through the station. "They're firing," she said, voice breaking. "All of them." Elias drew in a slow breath, the lattice within him responding not with violence but alignment, threads of possibility weaving together. "Then let them see," he said. "Not what I can stop, but what we can become." He reached for Thyrea's hand, their fingers interlocking, her luminous markings flaring brilliantly as their resonance synchronized. Not binding but partnership. Aelith stepped back as the chamber filled with light unlike before. Not blinding, not destructive, but vast and warm, spreading outward through the station and into space itself. The incoming barrage struck the field and vanished. Not absorbed, not deflected, but transformed, energy dispersing harmlessly, rewritten into calm. Across the galaxy, sensors registered the impossible, weapons losing lethality without losing power, aggression dissolving mid-flight. "What is happening?" a distant commander cried across open channels. Elias spoke then, his voice carried by the lattice into every receiver, every bridge, every throne room. "This is Elias, Ward of Earth," he said, not shouting, not commanding, simply present. "I did not wake to rule you. I woke because someone believed my life mattered more than her chains." Thyrea stood beside him, proud and unbowed. "I will not hold your fate hostage," Elias continued. "I will not anchor your fear. If you want war, you will choose it without blaming destiny." The silence that followed was absolute. One by one, weapons powered down. Not all, but enough. Human ships held position. Allies followed. Hostile fleets wavered as doubt crept where certainty had been moments before. Aelith sank to her knees, overwhelmed, tears tracing paths through glowing skin. "You've changed the function of the Covenant," she whispered. "You've rewritten law without breaking it." Elias sagged, the effort draining him faster than he could recover. Thyrea caught him again, holding him with fierce tenderness. "Stay with me," she pleaded. "Please." He smiled weakly, eyes never leaving hers. "I'm not done," he said. "But I can't do this alone anymore." She nodded instantly, without hesitation. "Then don't." She turned to the stars, voice ringing with royal authority and personal truth. "Let it be known," she declared, "that the age of enforced fate ends today. Any who seek war will answer not to prophecy, but to those willing to stand in its way." The lattice dimmed slowly, settling into a stable glow, the station's alarms falling silent, the galaxy exhaling after holding its breath too long. Elias closed his eyes again, not in surrender but in rest, the worst passing, the climax reached but not yet resolved, because the final question still lingered in the quiet that followed. What happens to a galaxy when fate is no longer something done to it, But something it must choose together. The quiet that followed felt heavier than the battle ever had. Not the silence of fear, but the stillness that comes after a storm decides it has taken enough. The lattice within Elias no longer burned. It breathed, steady and warm, like a heart that had finally found its rhythm. He woke slowly, not to alarms or urgency, but to light, soft and golden, filtering through the chamber like dawn through clouds. His body ached in a way that felt earned rather than broken. Thyrea was there before he opened his eyes fully. He felt her presence first, familiar now in a way that went beyond memory. "You stayed," she whispered, voice thick with relief. Her hand resting over his heart as if confirming it was still there. "Wasn't planning on leaving?" Elias murmured, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "Galaxy made that pretty clear." She laughed softly, the sound fragile and real, and for the first time since he had woken. There were no chains of light around her, no distant projection between them. She was here, truly here, flesh and warmth and quiet strength. Beyond the chamber walls, the stars looked different, not rearranged, but calmer. Fleets still hung in space, but their weapons were cold now, lines of battle replaced by lines of vigil, worlds watching rather than waiting to strike. Aelith entered quietly, no longer the anxious supervisor of before, but something closer to a witness, her bioluminescence a serene glow. "The conclaves have adjourned," she said, awe still coloring her voice. "No declarations of war, no sanctions, no forced treaties." Elias raised an eyebrow. "That sounds suspiciously peaceful." "It is," Aelith replied, "because no one knows how to force fate anymore.